After 4 months of negotiations, the Senate has released the text of a $118 billion bill that pairs funding and security measures for the southern border with aid to Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan. Billed as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to address the southern border security issue, and following a 4-month stretch that broke every illegal crossing record, could this legislation fix the crisis the Biden administration has created, or could it make the situation worse, as some claim? Joining me now to discuss the ins and outs of this bill is Senator James Lankford from Oklahoma, who represented Republicans in the Senate throughout the negotiations. He serves on 4 Senate committees, including the Senate Homeland Security Committee and the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Senator Lankford, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always great to see you.
Tony, good to see you as well.
All right, let's just jump right into this. There's a lot of controversy surrounding this, the bill. Of course, a lot of that was out there before the bill even came out. Let's talk about what the bill actually says, what it does, and what it doesn't do.
So what it actually does, it actually builds more wall. It's $650 million to be able to build more wall. It has to be designed according to the Trump design. It adds a record number of detention beds to be able to hold people so we can catch and release. It adds a lot of detention officers. It adds asylum officers, Border Patrol, ICE agents. It increases deportation flights back out. All of those things are built into the bill. Then it has some major policy changes as well, especially changing asylum. This is the vulnerable issue that we have, is a very loose, very old, full of loopholes version of asylum. So we add a new version of asylum so that most people, when they actually come across the border, will be turned around immediately. A faster process for the screening with fewer appeals. So you can't just do endless appeals and stay in the country forever. It takes away the 10-year backlog, moves it to weeks or days to actually get to resolution on this. It ends the use of humanitarian parole to just give work permits to people coming into the country. So no longer do you just get a work permit for showing up at the border. You've actually got to go through the full asylum process and everything else on it. And then the last piece, it has an emergency authority on it, which has been much maligned in this and much misunderstood. It actually deals with the reality we have today. Today, we have more than 5,000 people crossing the border. All of those folks are going to be released into the country. If this bill was in place, all of those folks would have been deported out of the country. It doesn't count 5,000 in and then starts to deport people. It starts at the very beginning and just deports them all, and it does so for weeks until we can drive the numbers back down. It's targeted to how do we get control of the border again and stop the chaos.
So I want to pick up on that last point, because you're right. That's where I've heard the most criticism, is that this locks into place this 5,000 person limit. So up until that point, anybody can come in. So we're basically codifying that 5,000 illegal crossings is okay, and it doesn't trigger something until we breach that.
Yeah, that's 100% not true. And I've heard that from a lot of people as well, to say we're just allowing 5,000 people in every day. Actually, what we're doing under this bill is that is the last resort. We're adding a lot of different restrictions. We're detaining more people. We're doing faster processing in detention and deportation out of the country. All of those things are then. But we all know there are times a caravan will come across the border and just overrun us. In those situations, we need extra firepower to be able to shut it down. This gives us that extra firepower to be able to shut the whole thing down. Right now, the default is everybody's in when we're crowded. This would be the default is everybody's out when it's overcrowded. So no one's just being caught and released anymore. This is focused on detention, on quick processing, on quick deportations and hearings to bring the numbers down dramatically. So the 5,000 is not allowing 5,000 in. It is the emergency break glass authority that if we have those caravans, we're able to turn people around quickly.
So just make sure I understand this. So all these other provisions are going to manage the crisis at the border, but if we're overrun, as we are right now, this break glass, as you said, would give the authority just to basically shut the border down, absolutely total, seal tight, nobody comes across.
That's correct. That means everybody coming between the ports of entry, they're all turned around and deported immediately. If you have appointments at a port of entry, you can apply for asylum. But that's the same rule that President Trump had in 2018 when he was trying to shut down between ports of entry, but leave the ports of entry open for orderly process. By the way, the courts kicked that out. and said that the president didn't have the authority to be able to do that. This law would actually fix that piece so that it would be allowed at that point. So this is what Trump tried to do. It just has a cap also attached to it to how it kicks in, but this is what he tried to do in 2018.
So, Senator Lankford, that's one of the other issues that I've heard is that this would tie the hands of the next president. Let's say we have another Donald Trump, and you've been to the border multiple times. I've been down there, was there before the Trump administration was actually able to get a handle on the border, and then I was there after they got a handle on the border, and it was a ghost town. If he comes back in and he is president or someone that has a strong border policy, would his hands be tied?
Absolutely not. This still allows to remain in Mexico. It protects all of the same authorities that President Trump used before. So there are no previous authorities that are taken out. This adds new authorities. It strengthens the asylum process, strengthens the detention process, takes away a lot of the appeals so we can do faster deportations. But this doesn't limit in any way presidential authority for any of the authorities that have been used in the past. We fought very hard for that to be able to make sure that presidents that actually want to enforce the border, unlike President Biden now who does not, presidents that actually want to enforce the border, this is one more authority laid on top of what they already had. As you recall, and you've seen it and talked about it, we had days under the Trump presidency as well when we had 4,000, 4,500 people even illegally crossing the border that the Trump administration was scrambling to try to pull authorities together to be able to deal with. This law, if it were to pass, or this bill, if it were to become law, you would not have any days like that ever again because you'd have dramatically increased authorities from day one.
Is there an expiration on this, a time limit in which these provisions are in place?
Yeah, only one of them, this Border Emergency Authority, this 5,000 authority, it has an expiration of 3 years because it's really designed to help us get control of the border while we're staffing up, while we're adding the detention beds, while we're adding the deportation flights. We needed something as a backstop so we can make a difference right now. But it's not intended to be a long-term authority. It's intended to be an immediate, let's stop the chaos at our border right now. Remember in December, we had 10,000 people a day that were illegally crossing the border in December. This bill, if it had been in place, all of those folks would have been turned around. But without it, we had 300,000 people that came into our country.
What does this bill not do that you wanted to see done?
Oh, I'd love to get all of HR 2. What the House put together was a very solid bill. A year ago, the House said we need new law, and they put together a very comprehensive package to be able to deal with that. Unfortunately, they didn't get a single Democrat to vote for that. In fact, they didn't even get every Republican to vote for it in the House. When it came over to the Senate, we pushed it into an amendment. We didn't get all Republicans on it, and we didn't get a single Democrat either. So there are aspects in that I'd love to be able to have. But right now, I'm trying to get as much as I possibly can with a Democrat Senate, Democrat president, and a barely just a 2-vote majority House. We can't just sit and say we want the perfect, and so we're going to allow millions of people to come in over the next several months while we're waiting on the perfect. Let's stop the chaos and do everything that we can right now.
10 seconds. You've been at this a long time. I've been tracking this for 20 years. I've been here. Is this the breakthrough on the border policy that we've been looking for?
This is a dramatic shift. I'll let everybody decide on it. But this is a dramatic shift, and it closes that asylum loophole that we've all known needs to be done for a long time.
All right, Senator James Lankford, thanks so much for joining us.